So I'm trying to appeal to the generic confusion around e-bike batteries. Obviously, this is a specific manual, so maybe if your manual is confusing, general stuff about e-bike battery kits might be relevant and whatever. This is the S045 operating manual for lithium ion battery manufacturer. So weird, it's a unit pack power. You know, they do stuff with kind of custom fitting batteries into different shapes, but I guess this is just a generic shape that they put their name on. Interesting. I watched a video by the person who is, I guess, the owner of Unit Pack Power. It's like a tour of how they do things, and it's a little strange. Whatever, it was insightful. Yeah, so watch that video if you're interested in where these batteries come from. But at the same time, this is just the generic thing that they put their name on. And you could see there's silver and black. On the cover, there's two kinds of colors. The safe lock used to lock the battery on the frame and turn off and on the battery power. This is exactly what it sounds like. I mean, they got that one right. When you slide it in, and it's a tough slide. There's a lot of friction in there. This battery isn't gonna just slide out on its own, but basically you lock it into place, push in and turn right, and that engages the lock. And then when you actually turn it on, you just turn it regular. You don't have to push in. Actually, I think if you push in, it doesn't work. The lock works, but word of warning, there are some screws on the bottom, or bolts, like machine screws, machine bolts, and they will vibrate out. So I park it inside, and one day there was like this little machine bolt on the ground, and I was like, where did this come from? I don't remember screwing this in. Looking around on the bike, I couldn't find anything, so I just put it on the table. And the next day, I unlocked it and slid out the battery to charge it, and the lock was all loose. I could literally slide it out. The other screw fell out, and I had to Loctite them down. Loctite Blue is the kind you use for small things, and it worked. But there's a lot of things when you build an e-bike kit where you just gotta Loctite it. And actually there's a lot of things with this bike rack you gotta Loctite. But I would not have thought that the lock to the actual battery would be one of those things. And by the way, you don't have to remove your battery to charge it. There is a charge port on the bottom. You can plug the battery in while it's in the bike rack. Okay, now we're onto the battery taillight. The way this looks in pictures makes it seem like it has a reflective backing on it. It's basically a black void. There's like, 8 holes with LEDs. They just appears as 8 solid dots. And what is annoying is that, well, I guess there's 2 things that are annoying. One, I wish there's a reflector in the back. I mean, you got this huge battery powering this light. You'd think it'd be the best rear light for a bike. And really it's not. I mean, it looks cool, right? It's like better than having a handle on the back of your bike, but it's just these little circles, right? So it just appears as like a pattern to people. And it doesn't flash. There's no flashing function, which is really disappointing. Because, I mean, really, that is what you want. It's funny because there's a mounting bracket for a flasher underneath it, and you're gonna have to use that mounting bracket. So whatever, I guess the more lights, the merrier. Okay, now we have the battery level light, which only works when you have the key turned into the on position. And for whatever reason, my red light doesn't work. So I basically just see 3 green lights. On top of that, this thing isn't even accurate. And I found out the hard way on that. We'll get to with charging time. Maybe it's just the way mine is. I've seen stuff where people's don't even work at all. Okay, so you got a handle on the back for pulling it out. If there's a version of this without the light where it's like there's literally a handle, but I think that's lame. Like, even if this light sucks, like, I'd rather have a light on the back than a stupid handle. But whatever, that's just me. I'm vain in certain ways. A USB charge socket. Yeah, I guess if you want to charge your cell phone, you can. That would really be a last resort thing for me. And then the charge socket. Now, a thing to note is there's these rubber grommets on here. They'll talk about the waterproofness of it, or water resistanceness. I guess I've ridden in the rain. It did successfully keep rain out, but there was water underneath the lip of the grommet going sort of down the shaft of it. In order for it to get to the charge socket, it would then have to go to the bottom and then come back up and then get into it. So I would say it has water resistance properties, but if you ever end up in the rain, when you get back, pop the rubber grommets out so that way any moisture can escape, and don't charge it immediately after being in the rain. Make sure everything is totally dry. So now we have the charge, which is the charger. Plug into electric green light, then plug into battery red light. After full charge, change to green, then finish charge and unplug the charger. It's a crazy sentence, but basically it means that when it's charging, the light will be red, and when it's done, the light will be green. That's what it comes down to. And then the discharge socket is an XT90 plug. It's funny that they aren't actually showing it. They're showing the wire going off into nowhere, but that's what the plug is. Okay, so anyways, controller box. This battery have space to put the controller, but you need to confirm your controller small enough to put it in. Normally, the controller need to customize. We do not provide the controller. Okay, first of all, there is no controller box that is small enough that would fit into this thing that would use a battery this big. I'm sure on like a 250 watt bike with reduced features, maybe there'd be a controller box that's that small, but why would you be using a 14.3 pound battery with the rack? It's probably like, I don't know, like 18 pounds. You wouldn't be using that. You'd have some like 10 amp hour battery that's like half the weight. Because by the way, this thing is heavy. It surprised me how heavy it was. There's no spec. When I bought it, there was nothing to say how heavy it would be, but I have a video where I actually built this. So maybe you want to watch the video where I build this and specifically about modifying the rack to be stronger. But if there's anything I didn't include, I'll try and include it here. Here are the confusing installation instructions. Yeah, and the problem with these instructions are that the pictures are so tiny. It's basically saying each box shows you what parts you're going to use, but it shows you nothing on how to put them together. So you're looking at number 2 and you see these washers, these bolts and these clips, and you're like, well, what order am I supposed to put them on in? Like, what goes in front of what? As it turns out, the bolts are not long enough also, by the way. So that's another problem. You put those pannier bag clips on there and you put the nut on the end and the nut doesn't go all the way on. So the bolt's not long enough. I think I definitely swapped it out. And then number 3, you see these little rods and they kind of flail around and you can't tell how you're actually supposed to secure them. And the video I watched, which was for a June Star rack, and it's basically the same thing with different branding, that one combined the mount and the nut into one part, whereas mine is a little more complicated and probably saves a couple cents in manufacturing, but it's not as good. Basically, if it comes loose, the whole thing falls apart, and these bolts will need Loctite or they will fall out, guaranteed, and the whole rack could fall backwards when you're riding because those rods aren't going to be attached to anything and the bottom's still attached, so it could just slide backwards and crash behind you. Yeah, it's funny. They have what number 5 is, but they stopped numbering it. Like suddenly it's like we're at B. Like it goes 4, and then we go to nothing. And then we're seeing the battery installed, and then we're turning the keys, and I guess we're removing it. Okay, kind of weird, right? Like wouldn't you show inserting the battery for the first time? But again, these are bad instructions. So, okay, now operating manual. Dear user, thank you for using our products. In order to provide better service for you, we hope you know more information of the product and get your feedback. This manual is for the correct method to use the battery. It will teach you how to use the battery safely and maintain it, so all the user, maintain, and manager people must read this manual carefully before you use. Battery maintain. Number 1. After install the battery, according to the instruction manual, please recharge the battery to fully before you use. Please turn on the switch when you recharge so that the battery can be recharged 100% fully. After the battery charge and discharge 3 to 5 times, the battery capacity will reach at maximum. So it's basically saying that it's not fully charged when you get it, and it won't be able to be fully charged until you recharge it a few times. Number 2. Although the battery is waterproof, But when ride in heavy rain or wading road, please make waterproof measures. Better avoid battery damage because of inflowing. If the battery is inflowing, please turn off the power and remove battery from vehicle and looking for professional person to check as soon as possible. So it's basically saying we do things to try and make it, we'll say, water resistant. Notice there's no IP ratings on this. They're like, okay, let's do something, right? Like this would be very bad if water got in to the battery because it would, short circuit and explode. But they're basically saying we make no promises. So your main points are where it connects, where you push it in and it connects to that kind of plastic hood. And the other one is the ports in the bottom, which I think are the bigger risk. If you have some bags on you ready, that's the way to go. But I have ridden in the rain. I didn't have bags on me. I had the intention of being ready for riding in the rain, but I didn't think I'd be riding in the rain on the day I did because, you go out and the weather says it's not going to rain and then suddenly it changes or suddenly like, oh, it's 100% chance of rain. And so that's what ended up happening. So I basically just like hoofed it to get back as fast as possible. So yeah, it's like, if the battery is inflowing, please turn off the power and remove battery. Well, if water's getting the battery, you don't know it's getting in there until your battery explodes or until whatever, something happens where you're not getting power anymore. So I'll give them points for trying, but at the same time, I don't know if I have faith in something that isn't technically tested to be water resistant, right? That's the reality. Number 3, the discharge current is very large when start your vehicle. There will be, along with starting, if you brake continually, and it is harmful for the battery if discharged with large current. So please ride with suitable speed and avoid brake continually. Okay, I know I'm making fun of the way this is written by people who don't read English. I guess the thing I would have to say about that is that if you're selling to an American market, you could get somebody on Fiverr. I mean, you could get somebody to do it. Social media, user-submitted translations. Hey, proof or manual? It's so easy to do this, maybe. There's lots of languages in the world. But what it comes down to is that it's funny, so I'm going to read it. My bigger problem is when information is wrong, by the way, not whether or not it's grammatically correct or hilarious to read. But basically what I think this is saying is don't just throttle it all the time. Which, I mean, it is a bike battery, so if you're using it like it's a motorcycle and all you want to do is throttle, well, just get a scooter, right? Like it's better at what you're trying to do. So yeah, to say don't just put 100% load on the battery all the time. I'll actually start in a low pedal assist and I'll kind of work my way up to 5. I think that's basically what they're getting at. So whatever brake continually means, I guess it means like inefficient riding. Like if you're throttle brake, I guess if you're driving in New York or something, like it's race to the light and then brake and race to the light and then brake. But in this case, I guess they're saying drive with efficiency. Number 4, temperature will impact the battery using. Best using temperature is whatever Celsius is. Out of this range, the battery capacity may be lower as marked. Oh, okay, in winter. Winter, the battery cannot recharge to fully and the running range will be shorter. It will go up automatically if the temperature rises. So it will be better to keep the battery in a warm environment in the winter. In summer, please ensure the battery with good heat dissipation and avoid insulation and recharge battery in high temperature. So I guess it's just be aware of your temperatures. Don't push things as hard with extremities of temperature. Number 5, it'll be good for the battery if recharged before deep empty discharged. Please turn on the switch when recharged and remove the charger when light changed to green after 2 hours. Okay, now, so this is about charging the battery. And the way I originally read this was remove the charger when light changed to green after 2 hours. Meaning it takes 2 hours to charge this battery, which it does not. That might mean if the light's green, unplug the charger within 2 hours of the light being green. Your optimal charge range of a lithium battery is 20 to 80%. Anything lower than 20, like it discharges fully, it creates like, I don't know, microcrystalline whatevers. They kind of build up and eventually they can pierce barriers and create a short. So that's the problem with undercharging. And in between, you're also losing capacity. The short circuit is just the worst case scenario. Overcharging is like when batteries start to bloat. And that's the thing. Barriers can break and then you have a short. The other thing that's confusing about this is please turn on the switch when recharge. Like, what is the switch? There's no switch on the charger, which there should be, like to turn it on and off. When I first charged it, I charged it for more than 2 hours. And the green light never came on. I thought, oh, I charged it enough. 2 hours seemed kind of unbelievably fast for this battery. And my assumption was it's probably 4 hours because maybe this manual was written for a 10 amp hour battery. I have a 20 amp hour battery, by the way, just a reminder. I was looking into it because, well, I ended up running out of battery power because my battery ended up dying because my indicators were not accurate. And I was just like slowly going down because I wasn't charging it enough. But this is a 3 amp charger. And with a 20 amp hour battery, it should actually take 8 hours to charge from 0 to 100%. And you can look up calculators on that. I found that out the hard way. Basically, my battery ran down, but it's not like it just dies. What happens is it'll start dropping out. So in this case, I was in pedal assist 5. I was on a major road. I was really trying to make time, and it would just like drop out. So it would be like 20 seconds of no power, and then 10 seconds of power, and then it cut out again. But the thing about that is if you drop down the pedal assist to like 1, it'll sustain that low speed. So it's no longer capable of giving me enough juice to go at full speed. But if you drop it down, it can sustain a low pedal assist that at the very least makes up for the weight that you're carrying. So it just feels like you're riding a bike with like a little power. It's not a bad situation other than I'm like, oh man, my battery's out. Like this isn't good for my battery. I don't want to let my battery go below 20%. But at the same time, as I want that pedal assist, I don't want to be pulling all this weight. So how did I let my battery run out? I have an LCD screen and then I have the battery meter on the battery and they never showed me the same levels. And I was believing that the battery would be more accurate than my LCD screen. And my LCD screen actually was accurate. So if my battery meter, which one of the lights doesn't even work on it, so that's already a flag. When my battery meter would say there was 50% power, my LCD would say that I was almost empty. But I never ran out, so I was just like, oh, well, I'm looking at this, it says I got enough power. What does the LCD know? So when I'd be riding home and it'd be like almost empty, I think, oh no, that's just this. This LCD's flaky. But really, what it is that I didn't know how to read the way this thing charged, and that has to do with not looking up exactly how long it should take. And it all because of this weird sentence in the manual. Made me feel like I knew what it meant, but it doesn't. So by the way, 3 amps is a fairly slow charge, which I actually prefer. Faster the charge equals more heat, equals more likely to have issues. But I wish the manual would have accurate information about this stuff. They probably just don't put this stuff in because there's so many variations and so many things that change. As this manual says nothing about the capacity of this battery or any standardizations or anything. It's very generic. And then, yeah, I guess the last thing is, do we have it? Yeah, let's put it here. So super important. They don't even say this, but the way you plug in this thing, ideally you have a surge protector and you can turn it off. Like you want a switch, but if you don't have a switch, what you're supposed to do is and they don't say this at all. You plug in the charger to the battery first, and then you plug the charger into the wall. And there's like a split-second delay between when you plug it into the wall and when the red light will come on and then the fan will spin up. If you plug it into the wall first and then plug it into the battery, as soon as that connector touches the metal connector on the battery, it'll arc. Crazy that they don't say this at all. But part of it was I plugged into the wall and I'm like, where's the switch on this thing, right? Like I thought there'd be a switch. So yeah, that was my first experience with it. But ideally, I like to have a switch so I can turn off the charger because I feel like if you don't let it go to green, you're gonna have an arc at the wall when you unplug from the wall while it's charging. So it's better to have a switch to turn it off. and then you unplug the battery. And also don't charge immediately after using either. Let everything cool down. It's a heavy battery. You want it to last as long as possible. And you don't want to be just carrying around a bunch of dead weight. Okay, warning. Do not put the battery into water. Store batteries in a cool, dry, clean place. Well, what about the waterproofing? Yeah, these are all, do not short circuit the terminals, yeah. More of a thing when you're installing it and you got those raw wires, like be super careful. Like if one wire slips and hits another wire, that's a big deal. This battery doesn't come with a fuse. Your kits and stuff will come with a fuse. So a fuse will defend all your controller and all your stuff from getting messed up by short circuit. But if you just connect two wires together for the battery, then that's the end of your battery. Yeah, a lot of this stuff is so obvious it's not even funny, but whatever. There's a thing to kind of be aware of also. Make sure your XT connectors, there's no tension on them, so they can't slowly get pulled apart. Always checking to see if connections are good, especially when a bike's new. Like every time you ride, you should just go once over everything and make sure there isn't something that's coming loose, because you don't want to find out about it when you're like on the side of the road, and then you got to figure that out. So yeah, that's it. And I will note that on the back of this manual is a, man, they're showing the curve of the earth. I don't even know in this picture if this is a real photo. Hard to believe, but it's very epic looking. It's also notable that the bikes that these people are riding are not e-bikes. These are just regular bikes. It's just kind of odd, but whatever. That note aside, I mean, it is a cool ending to this manual. And that's it.